Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast, my first season. My special guest today is a British-born, Spanish-based adventurer, writer, and windsurfing instructor. In 2015, he achieved his childhood ambition to windsurf around Britain, becoming only the fourth person to complete the circumnavigation this way, and the first to complete it alone without support. The expedition started and ended at the town of Clacton-on-Sea. This expedition included the following crossings: Devon to South Wales via Lundy Island, South Wales to Southern Ireland, and Northern Ireland to Scotland. And if this wasn't arduous enough, in May 2017, he set off on a solo expedition to windsurf the European mainland coastline. He windsurfed a continuous track from Norway's Arctic as far as Batumi, Georgia in the Black Sea. He then took a ferry ride to Odessa, Ukraine, and from there he sailed his windsurfer to Romania and finally to Burgas in Bulgaria, arriving on June 10, 2019. And this was the end of the voyage. In 2 years, he had sailed about 16,000 kilometers, a distance that almost doubled the record for a windsurfing journey. During this time, he used his expedition website to raise funds for the Worldwide Fund for Nature. He is also author of the book, Long-Standing Ambition, which chronicles his windsurf around Britain, and we're going to talk about that today. So everyone, please help me welcome Jono Dunnett. Hey, Jono, how are you, sir?
Good, Greg. Yeah, good. Thanks.
Oh, thanks for coming on the show and agreeing to share your story. This is awesome. Thank you.
That's a pleasure.
A lot of my listeners are sailors and windsurfers. Me personally, I started off windsurfing as opposed to sailing because when I looked at windsurfers and I looked at sailors on the water, it seemed that windsurfers were getting more of an adrenaline rush. So both are fun, but would you agree there's more of an adrenaline rush in windsurfing?
Yeah, certainly there can be, but it's not just the kind of excitement side that draws me to windsurfing and the sea, particularly as I get older.
Well, before we get older, so I'd like you take me back to when you were younger, like around what age did you start sailing or windsurfing, and which one did you do first?
I began dinghy sailing as well. I learned on a topper dinghy at Gunfleet Sailing Club on the Essex coast. So that's North Sea, Thames Estuary, North Sea, east coast of England. Yeah, so I got into racing a bit there as well. And then my brother, who's a year younger than me, he learned to windsurf. And yeah, I think you're right. It looked like he was having lots of fun. So I thought I got to learn this. And then we were a group of us growing up together, all windsurfing, so we had a pretty good time of it, windsurfing, from age 10 through our school years. Yeah. Was it your brother that taught you windsurfing? We taught ourselves, really. It was a very kind of tidal place. Yeah, we spent the first few months kind of, we were kind of too small to lift a board by ourselves, so we kind of had to help each other, and to start with, we'd go drifting off down tide, and then spend half the day trying to walk the gear back. So we had a good incentive to learn how to stay upwind. Well, speaking of upwind, I've taught a lot of beginners over 10 years. And of course, they're kind of frustrated that, I used to say it takes about, 3 minutes to go out and 3 weeks or 3 months to come back. So do you recall how long it took? Do you recall going out your first time and wondering why you couldn't get back? Or because you were a sailor, you understood the wind, but so was it easier for you to get back to the beach, so to speak? I guess so. It's easy to blame the tools, but, we were on we began on a massive adult board with a tiny little triangle sail because we were very small. So it was almost, it was never going to work really to stay upwind. So it was all about reducing your losses. But yeah, the sailing background certainly helped. To be honest, that was all so young, I kind of struggled to remember it. But advancing, then getting harness on 2 feet and the straps, I guess was pretty easy then for you. That stage obviously was a little bit later, but certainly have clear memories of first time properly in the straps, properly planing, and very fond memories of those. Yeah. Do you recall one of your best wipeouts on a windsurfer, going Mach 3 or anything like that? Did you hit something in the water? Yeah, well, there's been a lot of very memorable, spectacular wipeouts over the years. Hitting fish, kind of, and then, through in sort of more, later on with kind of racing with far too big sails and going over the backs of waves and burying the nose, struggling or not managing to hold it all together. And yeah, so there's a catalogue of big wipeouts, and in the waves, well, of course, I had my fair share of tumbles. And you also taught sailing as you were growing up.
also, correct?
Yeah.
Did you teach on? Did you teach on? Because here we have a lot of Hobie catamarans. Or were you teaching on lasers, or were you just teaching on all sorts of sailing vessels?
No, I've been my teaching experience is all windsurfing really. I've done a bit of kind of teaching in dinghy sailing is more just kind of like hand holding stuff really rather than teaching. I'm very kind of scrappy, self-taught, not doing things the right way when it comes to boats.
And around what time or period in your life did you start thinking about, hey, I wonder if I could windsurf around Britain? When did this idea start to enter your mind?
Okay, so I had to kind of just refresh my, actually, read the first part of the book to kind of remind myself, because I hadn't thought hard about.
Well, I do. Well, for a while. Yeah, no, but I do recall you. Yeah. I do recall you mentioning that you did find a book written by Tim Batstone, who did the voyage in 1984. Only he had a yacht and an inflatable dinghy following him around, but which enabled him, of course, to change sails in his board, whatever the wind conditions. But you chose to not do that. You didn't want any help. No one was following you around, correct? When you did yours?
No, yeah. So I did it solo. I mean. Yeah, the idea for it, I think, came when I was growing up. I did some racing around the UK with a friend and his parents who had a camper van, and they used to take us around doing the events. And so I got to see a bit of the UK then, and I think it was on those trips away that I thought, wow, perhaps I could one day sail around Britain. And I was always trying to convince Clyde, my friend, to do it with me. But in the end, I had to sort of concede that Clyde just wasn't up for it. Yeah, eventually do it myself. But the attraction had always been to do it kind of without on the water sport anyway, because the kind of the purity of sailing without a kind of noisy engine by your side is just that's what appeals to me really.
Well, not only that, you couldn't change your sail. Do you recall what size sail you had? Was it a 6'2" or larger?
No, it's a big. So this is. Yeah, so raceboard by that stage we're using quite big sails, 9.5 meter sails. So I've got a 9.5 that was not a raceboard sail. It was a sail with more range that you can give a lot of tension to let the top of the sail twist off and spill the wind. But it was in retrospect it was a little bit too big. But yes, but in the lighter winds,
Well, you also needed
power.
Yeah, you also needed a larger volume board because, as I see from the photos, you still had to bring gear. You had to put the gear somewhere, right? I mean, you're not going to carry it on your back. So you had designed a kind of, was it a barrel, I guess you would call it, that you would store your...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was a barrel, and it was on the back of the board because, I worked out that it was not going to be very nice sailing with extra weight on the front of the board, and particularly when it gets windier and the board spearing through waves, you kind of need that part of the board as clear as possible. So it was a watertight barrel, 26 litres on the back, and I had a small little backpack for some, for sandwiches.
And of course, and before you started this expedition, there was a lot of logistics to set up. Like I think you created a website so people could follow or track your journey. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So I had a website where people could put who are perhaps available and willing to offer a bit of support along the way, a place to sleep or a hot meal, and where they could put a pin on the map on the website, and a way of contact. And before I launched the website, I thought, hey, this could be a total flop, but in fact, people were mega supportive and got behind me, and I had loads of support on the way, and that was. That's a huge part of it.
And you also had a radio, right? To be in contact with, I guess, well, not only Harbor Patrol, but I guess anyone else in the frequency could read you, correct? Like if you got into trouble.
I did, yeah. I mean, on my back, I had a tracker. In fact, the tracker was in the barrel, so that was relaying position to the website every 15 minutes. So there's a real time track. And I did have a radio, but I think I only used it once. And obviously when you're sailing, you've got both hands on the boom. It's not exactly easy to be fiddling with electronics. And I had a GPS But again, that's not particularly easy to use. It's useful for the crossings where you've got an exact point you're heading to and it's all pre-programmed. But it's not very easy to use on the fly, just a basic GPS. And then I had just a phone. So most of the navigation was just an app on the phone. Yeah, and trying to kind of, identify where you wanted to go by Google Maps. Well, not Google Maps, by satellite imagery. I'm
listening to you talk, and I'm like, to me, this is such a massive, like, nowhere did I ever dream about, I love windsurfing, but I wouldn't think to go around a country. So I'm just thinking of all the things that could go wrong. Like why would anyone in their right mind do this, but it's still fascinating. Like, it's still incredible. I mean, your story is, there is even a lot of humorous parts of your book, because I think at one point, like, forgive me if I'm pronouncing this name wrong, you had arrived in Port 11 from, was it Mevagissey, I think?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. You ran. I can't repeat what the surfer. You ran across some surfers. You told them where you had just windsurfed from, and they were kind of in disbelief that somebody had windsurfed, from Mevagissey to Port 11. But I don't know. And these guys turned out to be really cool, and all. You did meet a lot of interesting people along the way, and people are helping. But you also had some harrowing, I think, points, because when you're a windsurfer, you're kind of a spec to larger boats. Was it around Dover that, I don't know, I think I was reading, was it Dover that you had a bit of an arduous crossing, or am I getting that wrong?
Well, getting around Dover was the first kind of reality check that, hey, this is going to be quite difficult, where basically I just kind of got to the Dover Strait just too late, like just a few hours too late, really, before the wind was just coming up too strong. And because if I'd have got through, then I'd have had a good run on the south coast, like with the east, with following winds, and made good progress. But I just didn't get through in time, and I got kind of like trapped to the wrong side of Dover, and then it's a big old port to get around.
Yeah, there's a
lot of ferries.
There's a lot of boat traffic, right?
Yeah.
It was almost like you arrived at rush hour, and we're trying to land. That one had me like biting my fingernails, because if you've ever been in a minor, incident like that, where a boat can't see you or whatever, but that one had me a bit nervous for you, but I'm glad it worked out. What do you do with a sail so large? Like, how often was that you hit a lull? Like, did you just have to wait on your board for? I mean, you can't really pump a sail that large, can you, to power yourself forward?
No, you can. Yeah, I mean, that's why I took that style of board. This kind of very long, narrow race board. It glides through the water, but is much better than a normal windsurfer, a normal kind of high wind windsurfer. Yeah.
But even though the sail's monofilm, I guess it would still be heavy, right? I mean, weren't you exhausted at the end of the day, I'm guessing? Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I mean, physically, I was pretty shattered at the end of most days. But I'd done a bit of kind of training, obviously longer sails and things leading up to it, and then it was a long enough journey that, provided you don't kind of go into it too hot, as it were, you kind of gradually build up the fitness and get used to those long days. And then there's because you can't sail every day, you make there's some days when it's just too windy or there's no wind, then there's rests along the way that you make use of. But when the conditions are good, you have to push hard and make all the distance you can.
And you have to push even when you might not want to, correct?
Oh yeah, and that's kind of the big difference, really, between kind of doing some, maybe in some ways it's a bit similar to cycle touring, but on a bike you can always stop. You can always say, I've had enough today, and just find a field and camp. But you've got to get on the sea. You've always got to get in somewhere. So that's very different in that respect.
Well, yeah, you mentioned camping, because I don't want the listeners to think that you were staying in five-star hotels. There was points where you actually had to camp under your sail, right? That was your tent, right? It was your sail. That was your protection from the wind and rain, right?
Yeah. And so I used the sail as a shelter, sort of just kind of pin it up into the wind and find a stick or something to hold the boom up and just shelter under the boom there. And it works really well.
Yeah, but you're someone who's able to sleep in conditions like that?
Yeah, I mean, I had a sleeping bag and I had a blow-up mat, and by the end of it, it's you sleep better under the sail than anywhere else, really.
Really? Oh God. Okay. I could, that's a part I would really struggle with, let alone the whole journey you did. But I can't sleep, like lying on the ground, but, well, that's good that you can. So that must've helped. You were, I guess, more or less, you're never fully 100%, I guess, when you set out, but at least you had some sleep. Can you pinpoint part of the journey? Like at one point, because I read a lot of accounts of people that sail around the world and, they hit the doldrums. And even though it is great being by yourself on the sea, did it ever get too lonely at times, like in between land crossings? Or
I don't think so. I mean, to be honest, when you've already, you said about landing at, was it Port Leven and had a great welcome there. And I had a great welcome at many, many places. And that's another thing about sailing with a kind of unusual looking craft, is that it's like you're announcing your arrival. So you almost, if there's people around, it's very likely that you're going to strike up a conversation and have company, because you stand out in a big way. So there is no shortage of company on land. And to be honest, sometimes, the balance works. It was nice to have a bit of kind of solitary time as well at sea.
Yeah, I think at one point, you met an elderly couple who were in a sailing boat, and they showed you a lot of kindness. Didn't they invite you back to their place or something to eat?
Yeah. I mean, probably on a number of occasions. I'm not, I think I know who you're referring to, but yeah, I spent a number of nights on boats where showed up somewhere, and they said, do you need a place? Need a berth? Yeah.
Did the kindness of strangers surprise you, or did it surprise you every time?
I mean, the extent of it, I'm sure it did. I mean, I guess I must have been kind of, somewhat kind of thinking that I'd find, some help along the way. And I had a lot of contacts or kind of people I half knew as well along, around the trip, that I thought, well, I'm pretty much guaranteed I'm going to get a rest there. So that enabled me to kind of chunk the journey into bits. So rather than looking at the whole thing as one enormous undertaking, it was like, okay, so I just got to get here.
And was there a part of the...
the next leg is like 200. Yeah.
Was there a part of the journey that you would say was the hardest? Was it when you were 3/4 done, halfway done? Would you say do you recall one point where you just thought this is the hardest it'll get?
I guess once I'd got across to Ireland and made that, the longest sort of open sea crossing part, once I'd got that done, I started to feel more settled. Certainly I had a very rough time going around Land's End, and that kind of, I'd say that kind of, that was traumatic, definitely. But and then I was very fearful for the upcoming crossings. So once I'd got the longest crossing done, I started to calm down a bit. Yeah.
And roughly how long did it take the whole trip from start to finish?
I think it's 98 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
90, yikes. Okay. Do you know if anyone has tried to duplicate what you've done since 2015? Do you know, or are you the last person?
I don't think anyone's tried going around the UK again. I know there's I've heard from a few people who have been doing kind of smaller kind of journeys, but they're the same kind of style with carrying gear and camping on windsurf boards. So there's a small community of people who do it, but it's the kind of the possibilities it opens up on a windsurf board are it's amazing.
And I assume during these 98 days, like, you learned a lot about your equipment, and like, so did you, not asking what would you have done better, but would you have maybe brought more gear, less gear, or like something you could have used? Like, I should have brought that. Was there, I guess you had time to reflect on all that as you were doing the crossing, correct?
It's kind of like there's key problems, and once you've resolved those, it kind of opens up another kind of world of possibilities. So the first problem, which I did solve for going around Britain, was carrying gear, and the barrel on the back of the board was just ideal for that, because it didn't disturb the sailing at all. It was very pleasant to sail with, and I could carry just enough gear. What I didn't fix going around Britain was what to do when the wind really drops to nothing, because it was, I'm sure you've tried paddling a windsurf board with a rigged sail.
Yeah,
really awkward.
Yeah, I read that part. Yeah, you kind of put it on the boom. You put it kind of on the back of the board, right? And then you have to find room for yourself to lie on your stomach and paddle, correct?
Yeah. So I mean, that's what I tried going around Britain, but it's it's pretty desperately uncomfortable, and it's not the sort of thing you're going to self-rescue from any distance or in any kind of sort of sea. So I hadn't really got that fixed. But then for the journey around Europe, I did get that fixed as well, and that meant that kind of fear of being left without wind was much reduced.
Now, during these lulls in the wind, did any animals come visit you, like seals or sharks or dolphins? Did you encounter anything scary like that, or not scary?
Lots of seals, particularly the east coast of England and Ireland, and then on the west coast, more dolphins. And I did have a few times with dolphins when the dolphins were kind of, not that my board made much of a bow wave, but when I had the dolphins, alongside, and you could look down into the water, and the dolphins would be kind of looking up at you and just accompanying you for quite a way. So that was very special.
Yeah, it's moments like that where you kind of forget everything else, right? Like, here I am, I'm all alone, and there's dolphins.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so it's going to be all right. The dolphins are here.
Yeah.
So it totally puts your mind at rest. Yeah. Yeah, even if you're miles from land, and it's like you've got no reason to have an at-rest mind, but the dolphins have showed up, all's good.
Yeah, that's the right kind of fin you want to see coming out of the water.
Yeah.
So can you describe it at all, like, was you're nearing the end of your voyage, like arriving back on the beach that you had first left? I guess you had quite a crowd there, I saw in your photos. What's that feeling like?
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it was a little bit kind of, because like my brother had kind of organised a bit of a crowd. We were trying to kind of sail to a timetable and be there at the right time. But it was really good. The last day I sailed because my brother, who's also a Greg, and Clyde, they showed up, and we all sailed the last leg together. And it was quite interesting because it's a different sort of sailing when you're sailing with friends. It's a bit more competitive, and you're trying to kind of go faster than the other one. So it's, and I kind of realized that, going around when you're sailing kind of like 8 or 9 hours a day, you're sailing at 85, 90% maximum. And when you're sailing with friends, you're going for it fully, and it's much more tiring. It's kind of fun.
So are you saying on the last leg of your journey, your competitive edge took over, and you guys were trying to race each other to the beach?
Absolutely, yeah.
But you had a kind of a weight disadvantage. I mean, they didn't have the gear. You were. It's kind of not fair. Not fair, I'd say.
Yeah, yeah. I had a barrel, but but I also had a bit more practice than them in the last few months.
And about how long of a rest did you take? Before you decide to windsurf the European mainland. Like, how much rest did you give yourself? Like, I would have given myself a year, but how long after were you starting to think, hey, I'd like to do something like that again? Like, how long? 6 months, 3 months?
I'm not sure, but I'm definitely kind of fairly linear with how I do things. It's like one thing, then the next. So the thing after windsurfing around Britain was writing the book about it, which I never thought I had a book in me. And then kind of 2/3 of the way around, people have been saying, hey, you're going to write a book.
Well, yeah, you have a very good memory, because I was very impressed about how you could remember. Were you taking a journal?
I was, yeah. So I was recording notes in my phone.
Okay.
On the off chance that I might write a book, I think.
Okay. And did you like the process of writing your book?
I did, yeah. It was very much it was like a repeat of the emotions of windsurfing around Britain, and also it would be a shame to do something like that, I think, and never kind of revisit it. So yeah, I mean, in some ways I wrote the book for myself to kind of to read again, and when I'm looking back from some future point.
Well, yeah, just like you had read Tim Batstone's book somewhere right now. There's some lad in England or Ireland that's reading your book. So it's kind of it's a pretty cool process. I think that,
Yeah.
you might be inspiring someone else to do the trip that you did, and you chronicled it all, and so, roughly how long did it take you to finish the book?
I don't know. I kind of set myself the format of the book it's kind of like a diary. Yeah. So I tried to write a day, and then go and do something else. That's how I went at it. Okay.
So prior to May 17, so why would you, after doing something that was incredibly hard, want to do something even harder by windsurfing the European mainland? I know you were in Europe for a bit, right? Working. So, but why would you decide to do that?
Well, you say it was incredibly hard, but what it was an incredible experience. And at the end of it, because it's not, it's something you pace yourself as you're doing. It wasn't like I reached the end and collapsed. I kind of reached the end and was in kind of the best shape of my life, really. And so I knew that it was definitely possible to keep going. Yeah, I kind of, I knew I had the opportunity, and I'd kind of got kind of solved this problem of how to carry gear, and I had some ideas about how to solve the problem of getting becalmed at sea. Yeah, and I'm going around Britain. Britain is my home island, and then I thought, so going around Britain was a way to kind of get to know Britain, and then I thought, well, what's the next layer? The next layer is kind of continent. So that was kind of the idea. Yeah.
Are you going to windsurf the coastline of Canada next? I'm just kidding. We would love to have you here if you're thinking about it. Okay. Or you just can't say, are you planning something else now, or you're just good? I know you're currently writing your second book. You're writing your experience about your solo expedition around the European mainland. So you're currently in the writing process, or almost finished that book?
Yeah. So that book's almost finished. Yeah. It's actually kind of written, but rather than rush to publish it and it not be quite polished enough, I'll probably go for publishing in the autumn to leave the summer clear. And the idea in the summer is to actually, I've got a kind of classic dinghy called a Seafly, and the idea is to take that around Ireland on a bit of a summer journey. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's the plan. Yeah.
And by dinghy, because I think we use different term here. So the dinghy is the very, very small boat, correct? Kind of like a laser. Are those similar?
Yeah. So I don't know if you're familiar with a Wayfarer.
I've heard of it. Yes.
Yeah. So it's a boat with a mainsail and a jib and a spinnaker. And so a Seafly is a two-person boat, a little bit smaller than a Wayfarer, and hopefully. Well, yeah, it is a lot lighter as well, because obviously you don't have a launching trolley with you when you're doing a journey. So we have to have a system for pulling it up the beach at the end of the day.
This is something you would do alone?
No, this is with my kind of adventure partner. She's called Helena, and she's I met her in Norway. She helped with the kind of logistics at the beginning of the round Europe expedition, and she's into kind of quite adventure stuff. She's skied across Greenland and things. She's not much of a sailor yet, so that is, it's an interesting kind of twist. She'll be learning to sail going around Ireland.
No problem there.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you can store, in a dinghy, I guess you have a bit much more storage space than your windsurf board, right? I mean, slightly more.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, we're gonna go real luxury with 2 barrels each.
Yeah, that's right. Now, would you be willing to, at a later date when you're published? Because I really would like to hear about your European trip there, your windsurfing trip. Would you be willing to maybe come back on and discuss that one?
Yeah, absolutely.
I would definitely like to read the book first when you've published
great.
it. So, all right. Yeah. Am I forgetting anything else to ask you, or anything else you wanted to say? I'm going to put all your links in the episode description, people where to get your book and all that. But is there anything else you'd like to say, or something I forgot to ask you?
No, Greg. And if there is, then you can get me on the next one.
Okay, great, awesome. Thanks. Well, thanks so much for sharing your story with us, Jono. That was really kind of you. Thank you.
Pleasure.
All right, everyone. That was from England, living in Spain, Mr. Jono Dunnett. Don't worry, I'll put all the links where to find him in the episode description. Thank you for listening. We'll see you all next week. Bye. Say bye, Jono.
Bye-bye.